we did a lot of things during this year, and maybe we can summarize it, and we could split it, Daniel, into the generator team and also the UI part, which changes have been done during this year. So, Daniel, what are the changes we have done this year for the generators?
On the generator side, what have we done? I think the main points we've added is that we've added the Snowflake platform. So last year we had three platforms in Microsoft SQL Server, Databricks, and Microsoft Fabric, so to say. And beginning of the year we added Snowflake platform. Apart from that, we also added dimensional generators. So before that, we only had the option to model the core in Data Vault, and of course put the dimensional model data mart on top of that. But now we also can provide for all the platform or the target technologies the modeling that we model the core in a dimensional model. So that's really exciting because I think in a lot of projects that just makes absolutely sense that you don't do a data vault implementation, but data dimensional implementation. And last but not least, I think we added a lot of staging generators so that you can stage different things. So for example, if you have a SQL server and you have like files, CSV files and so on, this is also something that you can now do. And we've added a lot of options to different generators for different staging technologies or staging different types of things.
But why splitting it up? So why should I, in a bigger project, split it up into different staging generator and have the core separated?
So on the one hand side, I think it just makes sense from a project view that you kind of separate different things into separate pods, so that you can have in a bigger project you still have the overview of what resides where. For me, it's also much more that you separate different things into different pods or areas, so that you structure your projects in a much better way. So for me, it's just separation of kind of duties that I want to stage files for a SQL server, I want to stage Parquet files for a Databricks platform. So this is something different than what you do afterwards in integrating it into a core. And for me, this makes a lot of sense. There was a couple of more things that we did on a generator basis. So one thing is that we also implemented like different loading strategies for our projects. So I think there's two things that I'd like to mention specifically. So one is what we call the multi-version load. So multi-version load, what you do is you kind of take for one business key, you have different versions that are valid at different points in time. So for example, you have a customer and the customer address has changed at one point in time, and you have this in kind of your source or in your data store or whatever. And with a multi-version load, this allows you to integrate multiple of those these facts into your core or into your data mart in one load. So what we do here is kind of go into the source and look, okay, what are the different versions, and we load these versions into the core in one step, especially if you kind of think of where things are going, so that you have your data lakes where you kind of store just your whole history of stuff, and then you want to add something new into your core or your data mart, and you have to think about, okay, how do I integrate all the history in that, because the history sometimes is important. And with this multi-version load, you don't really have to think about how you do this, because we can provide this out of the box for you. The other thing is that what you often have is that you know, okay, you have changes that come from your source system, and you know when things happen. So you kind of, your source system has a tracker, kind of a date field, for example, when some fields were updated, and this is what we call the incremental load. And you can kind of configure this on an object-based level, that I only want to load the increments, so I don't have to look at all the millions of records, but just the 10 that got added to the system today, and this might be a huge performance improvement for your loads. So these are two things that we've also implemented during this year, more on a technical level that help you maintain your data warehouse.
We call them linked project. At the end, it's a data contract between different biGENIUS projects where you can exchange from one team to another if you split it up into different teams. And we see that here in the application. For example, we have different solutions, and inside one solution we have different projects, and these are data products. So each biGENIUS project is a data product in that case. So we have the customer order V2, we have the customer and the product, and the customer order V2 consumes data from the customer V1 and the product V1. And that's now possible. It was not possible a year ago to combine or exchange data, metadata between different projects, and that's now possible. We see that. We also use here a staging generator, and the staging generator does the staging, and inside our data product, we just use the staging object. We see that with this linked indication, and also from the customer, what I said before, we have it here, and also in the item V1 from the product, we see the linked model object. And also this project afterwards export two things. It's the customer order V1, and which is the older version for backward compatibilities. We also export this model object, and also we export the newer one, the order V2, which is indicated here. But we also see that inside the linked projects where we have our exports and the different imports with it, which I said or explained it before. Another thing, what we did,
maybe just to interrupt here. Maybe I can also show. I think what's also pretty cool is that you to see the data lineage across those different projects. Maybe you can show that to us.
Point. When we look here, we see the data lineage. Normally, the data lineage is just inside the project. So that means everything which is in white. But because we imported model objects from different projects, it's interesting inside this project to see where, for example, the customer V1 data is coming from. So we see here there are hubs behind it, some stages and some sources. Also, it's not dedicated for data products. It's just across biGENIUS project. That means also for staging, we see where the data is coming from which source system or which objects are flows into this project or maybe into other projects and then into the current project. One other thing is what we did is improvements in visualizing the model object, so the generated code. That means, let me open a Snowflake project, and you named it. We did Snowflake and also the dimensional approach, and we have here a dimensional Snowflake core project. What we had before is just the normal generate page where you can generate basically anything for the whole project. And what we did, because we think about when working with biGENIUS, working with views. Views are like workbenches, and you can put everything which you are working on in a current view or in a new view, and from there you can model the things, and it makes it even much better to see and to work with. And that's why we created views, and here we have the possibility to generate for a current view. That means all the model objects which are part of this view are generated. And this is something which we implemented. And the other thing which I'd like to show is you can go into an object. What we see here is the term mapping. The data flows from the left side to the right side, so from source to target, and we see the mapping here. And maybe I'm working here and I would like to see what is generated. Maybe I changed a couple of things. We see here a more complex expression in it. And we would like to see what is generated in the background. And that's possible. We can click on generate code, and we see here the code, which is in this case a Snowflake SQL code. And we see all the highlights and with drop table, create table, which is in blue because there are keywords. And we see also all the stuff in here, which makes it better readable when we have this kind of, which the user is known of, the IntelliSense, or not IntelliSense, the code highlighting. And sometimes we generate something, but the customer has a requirement to say for this specific, let's call it result view, or here source view, I'd like to change something here, or I'd like to have something completely different. That's also possible during, we implemented that in this year. It's to customize everything. Here we are at the advanced setting where you can customize a lot or almost everything. And one thing are templates. And so you could basically override a template. You can say, I'd like to override it for, I think I opened a Mart composite element, and I could say, I'd like to override the source view. Maybe I'd like to use it for every model object or just for a specific one. Right now in the list, I just have one. And here I have C# code with IntelliSense. That means when I type something, it helps me to find the correct object or the correct property. And here I could override a lot of things. And there are some repetitive tasks. Most often you would like to iterate through the terms, for example, or through the attributes and show them or do something with them. And we also implemented the kind of snippets where we can just say iterate through terms, and it will create a for each loop where you can iterate through the terms or some other stuff.
Okay,
and
cool.
Then you can add it, and this makes the template customization even faster. There is also a complete documentation behind it, where we have everything documented. So a typical API documentation where you have all the stuff, where to find something and so on inside the API documentation, and also the possibility of creating previews. So maybe I would like to see how my source view will look like when I did that change. And that's possible with the preview feature. And also, sometimes I'm not so familiar with C# and I'd like to check if my code is correctly implemented. That's also possible. There is a validate button where I would see the errors. For example, I removed the sign at the end of the line, and then I will see that there is an error at line 12. So it helps me a lot of when working with it. So I'm pretty sure what I have implemented is working at the end.
Yeah. So, but I think what so more on the base level. So what this is really cool. So if you want to do, you can kind of really go very far with this. But it also serves a kind of simpler need that we've seen in a lot in the past. So for one object, you have kind of already written your SQL statement or the what you want to generate in the native code. And this feature here, you can also use it for that. So you can kind of, if you don't do this with a delimiter and everything, so don't want to use C#, you can just paste in the SQL code that you want to have for this object, and then it's a kind of a SQL override that you use here for this specific object. So this is also a possibility that you have here.
Another thing which has been done, or we did a lot, is how to collaborate in the team. How can multiple team or employees work together on one project? And as we already said a couple of times, we have a fully Git integration. So everything which you see here is complete Git integration. So the browser is connecting to the Git repository. That's why it's possible to also support on-premise Git providers like Azure DevOps Server or GitLab Self-Managed. And that's not a problem. And what we did is some optimizations regarding performance, and of course some additional feature like rebase to main. Sometimes, for example, Donny and I work on the same project. He's doing a couple of stuff. I'm doing other stuff. He's already finished. He created a pull request. The pull request is merged into a main. And I would like to have the latest stuff from him as well, because maybe I have to change something here as well. So what's possible now is to rebase to main. So I can say, give me the last thing from main. And it can happen, of course, that there is a merge conflict in it. And then I see the comparison like we know from other Git tools. Where we see what's inside the main, what's inside our branch, and we see there is a change, and I can say, okay, take the one from the right side, and here I did a lot of changes, take the one from the right side or take the one from the left side, and then I can go through all the conflicts and update. And now I'm on the latest, and it is a rebase. That means all my changes are append to the main or to the latest changes from the main. So that helps a lot when working together in a team, in my opinion.